Join me every month for the inspiration to find your finish line. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of Find Your Finish Line. We're presented by Activice, the official topical pain relief partner of Ironman. Great cooling pain relief, Activice. You got to check it out. You can pick it up at Amazon, at Walmart, and Ironman.com. This podcast is not only about you being able to find your finish line at a race or an event, but we have to find those finish lines every day in life. And I talk to guests from all walks of life who have overcome many hurdles to get to their finish lines. And the guest today has probably crossed more finish lines than almost anybody I know. He is Dave McGillivray. Hello, Dave.
Hello, Mike. Good to be with you, man.
Always good to be with you. Dave is, the resume is long. First off, he's a great father and a great husband. He's been with the Boston Marathon since 1988 as the technical race director and then the race director. DMSE, his company, puts on races like the Falmouth Road Race, Beach to Beacon. This guy's run across the country. He's done numerous Ironmans. And this year, on April 18th, he is going to run his 50th consecutive Boston Marathon. Dave, when I say that, does that seem almost unreal?
I'm just going to keep doing it until I win it. I mean, that's what I told everyone, but looks like I'm going to be doing it for a long time. It does, Michael. When I did my first one in 1972, I'm not proud of this, but at the time I was 17 and you had to be 18 years old to officially register. The entry fee was $2 to register for the race. But knowing I was 17 and not 18, I didn't register. They would have refused my entry. So I jumped in and ran it anyways, and I didn't finish. And so I vowed to come back the next year, and I was able to officially register as an 18-year-old and finish the race, and vowed on that day in 1973 that I was going to run this race every year for the rest of my life, as long as, God willing, I could do it. And 50 years later, here we are.
And we're going to talk about that because you are a self-proclaimed running streak freak. That is, I love that. But let's go back to those Boston years when all of a sudden you'd run, I think, 14 or 15, Dave. Then they asked you to be a part of the event. They asked you to be the technical race director, and you had this trepidation like, my gosh, what a great career move, but I don't want to stop running. Take us through that, how that all transpired.
Well, it did all start with my first one, and I remember I had called my grandfather who lived near the race course, and I said, I'm going to go run that race in Boston. They say, they call that the Boston Marathon. I said, well, that's a good name for it. I'm going to run it. And I so remember years before that, especially in 1973, when Ron Hill won, set a course record of 2:10 and change in the pouring rain. And I turned to my dad and I said, someday, Dad, I want to run that race. And I just get up the morning of Patriots Day on 72 and said, I'm going for it. And my grandfather said he'd meet me at Coolidge Corner. I said, where's that? He goes, 24 miles. And he could walk to that location. Well, my brother drove me to the start, and I took off, and I got to about 20 miles, and down I went in the hills of Newton, and I got taken to the Newton Wellesley Hospital in an ambulance. And I called my parents and said, can you come pick me up? And they picked me up, drove me home. I called my grandfather. There's no answer. Called him again. There's no answer. Finally, 9 o'clock at night, he answers the phone. I said, Grandpa, where have you been? He goes, where have you been? He goes, the old man Kelly goes by, the street sweepers go by, no Dave. And I said, I failed. He said, you what? I said, I quit. He goes, nah, you didn't quit. I said, what'd I do? He said, you learned. I said, great. What'd I learn? He said, you learned that you cannot go along in life and set reckless goals. It's good to set goals, but you have to earn the right to do them. And I said, okay, I understand. He says, I'll cut another deal with you. And he said, what? He said, you train for this for next year, and I'll be there waiting for you. And I said, okay, deal. Well, 2 months later, he died, a heart attack on a bus. And I said, I got to do this for Grandpa. So I trained like the Dickens. I registered for the race. I was 18 years old. And in those days, I was running like the Bill Rogers and Alberto Salazars of the world. We were doing 120, 130 miles a week.
Yeah.
I was ready to go. And the day before I got sick, my parents said, you can't run. And I said, I have to run the newspapers to say, in Dave running in memory of Grandfather. And they said, you can't run, you're too sick. And I said, can you give me something that very few other people have ever given me before in this? What's that? I said, a chance. I just want a chance to do this. So they said, okay, they drove me to the start. I took off. I got to 5 miles and I was toast. Like I was so sick. And I kept going. And I got to the halfway point in Wellesley, Mass. And I saw my parents on the side of the road. And there's my mother. And what's she doing? She's crying. Why? Because that's what mothers do. They cry because they're worried about you, right? But then there's my father. And what's he doing? He's taking pictures. You know, my mother crying. And I said, okay, keep going, keep going. I got to the point where I dropped out the year before, and I'm doing a survivor shuffle over the hills, Heartbreak Hill, and finally at 21.5, boom, down I go again. So I drop out of my second Boston Marathon in a row, and I'm saying to myself, this wasn't meant to be. I wasn't meant to be a marathoner. And all of a sudden, a defining moment happened in my life, and I turned around, and I was sitting right in front of the Evergreen Cemetery. And that's where they buried my grandfather. And I didn't realize that it was on the marathon course because I had never got to that point before. And I said, son of a gun, he said he'd be here. And maybe he wasn't there physically, but he was sort of there spiritually. And I picked myself up and I finished in 4.5 hours. And that's when I made the commitment to run it every year in honor and tribute of the lesson my grandfather taught me in life about earning the right to do things. And that's when I did it for 15 years in a row. Then I got offered the job to sort of help run it in a different way. And I'll tell you, man, I struggled with that decision because I'm a commitment guy, right? And I did not want to give up running in the race. But I don't know, there was an epiphany, that, well, maybe I can do both. I don't know. So I directed the race. I helped direct the race during the day, and I got to the finish line, and I was high-fiving everyone. And Mike, I just felt awful. Not full of self-pity, but somewhat. I was cheering on all the runners, but at the same time, I didn't do it. And so I tapped a police officer on the shoulder, and I said, officer, do me a favor. He said, what? I said, will you drive me back to the start? He said, why? Did you forget something? I said, yeah, I forgot to run. So he drove me back to the start. I started at 8 o'clock at night, finished a little bit after 11 o'clock at night, and thus began my streak of running every year at night and being the last finisher for the last 34 years. And this April will be 35.
Dave, did anybody, when you went back with the police to the Hopkinton, did anybody know you were doing that? You were out there just virtually on your own, weren't you?
No, I was on my own. I was on my own that first year, and then it became a tradition. And so then other people joined me, and my brother started driving a car, leapfrogging me, setting up a little water station every couple of miles. And that's how we did it for, Josh Nemza, my friend who he ran with me a lot. Other people ran with me, but I never had more than like 3 to 5 people running with me. And then over the years, it grew, and people who didn't qualify would call me and say, hey, can I run with you at night? And I'm like, well, we have 4 waves in the race. I don't want to make this a 5th wave, for another 1,000 people. Like, it could have got out of control. And I was diplomatically trying to say, well, it's an open road. It's open to the public. You can do whatever you want. But I wanted to tone this down a little bit. Plus, it was a very personal thing, Mike. I never really wanted to bring a lot of attention to it. It was just sort of the calm after the storm. Because once I became the race director, that was a huge job, obviously. And, all the quote unquote stress leading up to the race, and obviously not getting a lot of rest, not training really well, not eating really well, and especially on race day. So over the years, it became harder and harder to do this at night. So, but hopefully, God willing, we'll be able to pluck out another one on April 18th.
I have no doubt about that. To our listeners, Dave and I go back quite a ways. We go back to what we call our Saucony days in the 80s when I was a rep for them on the West Coast, and Dave worked with them as their ambassador and coach, and we got to travel together. And Dave, back then I knew there was something special about you, and because I would see people being drawn to you. And I think it's because you have that innate ability to have leadership skills without trying to tell everybody that you're a leader. Do you think that comes from your grandfather, your parents? Where do you think that comes from?
Well, I think it's the old hard work ethic. Nothing was handed, right? And my story is, growing up here in Boston, sports here, professional sports is huge, as you know, Red Sox, Celtics, Patriots, Bruins, and it's just all around you. And so when I was a kid, what did I want to be when I grew up? A professional athlete. But as most people know, when they see me, I have a challenge myself, and my challenge is I'm vertically challenged. And so every time I went out for the teams, when my friends pick sides, in the park league, I got Fred, I got Pete, I got Mike, I got Tom, I got Sally, I got Jane. I mean, they picked the girls over me then either. And so, all right, I got Dave, and I was always the last pick. And when I went out for high school sports, I was really good in baseball and basketball because I worked out every single day, but I was always the last one cut. So it was really hard to sort of overcome that. And at the ripe old age of like 15, I learned about there's 3 types of pain. There's physical pain, which you can train really hard and overcome. There's mental pain. Similarly, you can overcome that. But the worst and the most debilitating of all 3 pains is emotional pain. And it's hard to train for that. You just get whacked in the side of the head unannounced. And that's what was happening to me. And I learned the concept of rejection at a young age, being rejected. And there's nothing worse than the feeling of not being needed or wanted. And that's how I felt as an athlete, not as a person, but as an athlete. So what I do, I started to run because nobody can catch you from running. And so I just started setting all these personal goals. And, the very first one was running my age on my birthday. When I was 12, this is pond near where I live, and it's 6 miles around. The morning of my birthday, I ran 6 miles around the pond. And then later on that night, after cake and ice cream, I said, I might as well go run this off, and ran around it again. So I ran 12 miles on my 12th birthday, and I thought that was cool. So when I turned 13, I said, well, I ran 12 on 12. I might as well run 13 on 13, and 14, 15, and started that streak of running my age on my birthday every year for the last 55 years. And people look at me like, you're crazy. What are you going to do when you turn 90? And, my attitude is, first of all, I want to be breathing, then get out of bed, and then, I'll decide then. But, my motto in life has always been, it's my game, so it's my rules, right? So I can change the rules anytime I want. So I always try to set goals for success, not failure. I'm realistic about what I'm about to do, and I don't commit to it until I earn the right to do it. And all of that is ingrained in how I approach life and how I approach leadership. And I've always felt that I'm no better than anyone else, and none of us are better than anyone else. We're all in this thing together. And that's sort of how I live each day.
Well, your humbleness, Dave, is your strength. And in the mid-2000s, you wrote the book, a fantastic book called The Last Pick. And it is pretty revealing. And I knew a lot about you, but I didn't know, what was going on in your life when you were 14, 15, 16 and not being picked and all that stuff. Was that, when you wrote that book, was it part of a self-healing process so you could heal some of those emotional scars?
Well, I heal by giving back, Mike. When you give, you receive even more in return. And I just felt that, for me, I wanted to be a professional athlete, but it evidently wasn't meant to be. But there's always another path. and I took a different path. And all I was trying to do in writing the book is to, I tell it when people say to me, "What's your book about?" I always say it's about the person reading it. Everyone that's reading the book is in it because you can identify, we all can identify with that same thing. None of us are always the first pick, right? And sometimes we're the last pick and sometimes we're the no pick. And how do you process that? How do you get beyond that? And it's just a matter of, will and determination and passion and all those attributes that sort of drive you to be able to attain your goal, even if you have to change the rules along the way.
Exactly. And you've graduated to the kids' books of Dream Big and your latest one of Running Across America, which you did do. Are you, because, my 6-year-old grandson looked at Dream Big and read it, and I could see the look in his eyes on that there's stuff out there that is bigger than him, and one day he may be able to do it. That's got to be some great self-satisfaction on putting together children's books.
Yeah, I literally got an email, no kidding,
What?
30 minutes ago from some gentleman who said his daughter, who's 5, read my book, and he sent me a picture of her running, and she's running some pathway around a park, and she did it 5 times for a mile. And He said she's so inspired by your story. And I mean, how can you not, when you read things like that, how can you not just continue to try to instill in children in America the whole idea of setting goals and not limits and not being afraid to do so. So it comes back to me in dividends. Let's, put it that way. So dream big for me, when I was little, but I had big dreams. And then, I went after them. Running Across America, for that one, it's funny because I remember I was in the Hancock Tower in Boston, and I was thinking about running across the country, and I looked out the window and I saw Fenway Park. And I saw a sign out in right field. The sign said, "Help make a dream come true, support the Jimmy Fund." I wasn't even sure what a Jimmy Fund was. So I picked up the phone, I called the Jimmy Fund, and a guy by the name of Ken Coleman answered the phone, and he was the voice of the Boston Red Sox and the executive director of the Jimmy Fund. I said, "Hi, Mr. Coleman. My name's Dave, and I want to run across the country for the Jimmy Fund." And after he picked himself up off the floor, he's like, "Okay, fine. The Red Sox will support you. The Jimmy Fund will support you." And but what I really wanted to do was play second base at Fenway Park, right? But so we cut a deal where I started ceremonially in the Kingdome in Seattle during the Red Sox Seattle Mariners baseball game. And it was weird, Mike, because I was running around the Kingdome and everyone was on their feet cheering and screaming. But it was like an empty kind of accolade because I hadn't done anything yet. Yeah, I made the commitment to go east, but I hadn't done it, so I flew down to Medford, Oregon, started in Medford, Oregon, ran across the country, finished in my hometown of Medford, Mass, ran the 7 miles to Fenway Park. I ran into Fenway Park and got a 10-minute standing ovation. That's where I felt good because I had just run across the entire country to raise money for kids with cancer. And Runner's World said that was the first time in 1978, the first time anyone had combined running with raising money for cancer research. That's way before Team in Training and Live Strong and all that. And that was a proud moment I never realized that, So I finally, when I ran into Fenway and everyone's cheering, the Red Sox, the Mariners were playing ironically at Fenway on that night. They're all yelling and screaming and everything. And it was funny because they said, "Come out of the left field wall, the green monster, run around the warning track, finish at home plate, say a few words, and, exit the park." And okay. And I took off and I started running. The crowd was screaming and screaming and screaming. And I said, "This is my moment. Okay, if I can't play second base here, I'm going to run around here, and I'm going to keep running and running." I kept going around and around. I thought they're going to call the police on me. Get this guy off the field. We got a game to play. But again, those are defining moments in your life.
It's amazing you didn't hit that stadium and put on running cleats, baseball cleats. You know,
No,
that would have
don't
been.
think I didn't think about it, so yeah. So
Well, it's funny how you talked about your grandfather and the goals, and you've got to earn them. And I had this question a little bit further down, and the reason I did is because you've always been that heavy goal setter, where it defines your life and it defines what you're going to do. After you had your bypass surgery in what, 2018? That was
yeah.
2018. Self-admittedly, it was a real scare. But you finished Boston 6 months later after the surgery. Tell us what that meant, Dave, to you and your family, and to you personally, of being able to come back from a scare like that.
Well, I always, you know, all the running. I've run about 160,000 miles. I've run 165 marathons, done the Ironman 9 times, and you've welcomed me at the finish line, and run across the country a couple of times, run up the east coast of America, done a 24-hour swim, 24-hour bike, 24-hour run, did the World Marathon Challenge, 7 marathons, 7 days, 7 continents, all this foolishness, right? And all these things. So you kind of get the impression that, you're probably a little bit bulletproof, you're pretty fit, and you're invincible in that sense, and nothing's going to go wrong.
You're in shape. Yeah.
You're in shape. So like, what can take me down? Nothing, in a sense, right? And then I was out running one day, and I could feel this difficulty in my chest and difficulty breathing, and it persisted, and I didn't blow it off, but I was trying to find out for myself what's causing this. Was it the heat, the cold? Did I tie my shoes the wrong way? Was it something I ate I didn't eat? And did I not get enough sleep? What was it? And nothing. I couldn't put my fingers on it. So I went to the hospital here in Boston, Mass General, and they did all these tests on me, echocardiograms, pulmonary tests, stress tests, EKGs, everything. And they all said the same thing. There's nothing wrong with you. And I said, yes, there is. I can't breathe when I'm running. And I said, guys, you got to give me the big boy tests, right? You got to kind of look under the hood here and check me out a little tighter. And they did. And they did a CAT scan and did an angiogram. And the cath doctor walks in, and he puts in the monitor, and he says, there. I said, there what? He goes, there you've got severe coronary artery disease. I said, no, really, what's going on here? He goes, no, you do. I said, you must be looking at someone else's charts. He goes, no, those are yours. I said, how can that happen? I said, there's only 2 ways this stuff can happen, guys. 1 is genetics, and 2 is self-infliction. What do you He says, well, maybe both. And I said, okay, I can't control the genetics, but I can control the self-infliction. And I said, and I turned to my doctor, and the first thing I said to him, I said, zip it up. He goes, what? I said, don't tell anyone. He said, why? I said, I don't want anyone to know. It's the ding in my armor. It's like, no one can know this. And then it leaked out, and people started finding out. And I eventually got letters and emails from people saying, hey, I heard about your illness and your diagnosis. And so I had the same symptoms. I went in, I was ignoring it, but I decided to go in and get it checked. And I walked out with 3 stents, and you saved my life. I went, whoa. And then I started realizing, you little selfish son of a gun, you want to keep this all to yourself, but you could help save lives. If you just expose that it can happen to anyone. And I realized that the ripe old age of 60, that just because you're fit doesn't mean you're healthy. And I always thought it did, so I turned to my doctor too, and I said, I have a question to ask you. He said, what? I said, is this reversible? He goes, it depends. I said, depends on what? He goes, depends on the person. I said, well, you're looking at him. I'm over here. He says, well, you and your discipline and the way you go about business, I think you can have an impact on your own illness. I said, sign me up. I went on a tear. And that's when I called the Ironman. And I said, hey, I know you've invited me in the past, given my history. And I'd love to do it again. They go, well, we heard about you. You got to get a note from your doctor. I said, excuse me? You got to get a note from your doctor. I said, I've never been asked for a note from my doctor. Well, we need one. We don't want you going down in the lava fields on us. And I went, oh. So I went to my doctor and I said, Ironman wants a note. He goes, I'm not giving you one. I said, why? He says, because I don't want this on my watch either. I said, well, I've improved over the last 5-6 months. I'm good. I've changed my diet, my nutrition. I lost 27 pounds. I've lowered, I said, I've lowered my cholesterol level by over 100 points. I've done the work. I've earned the right. I want to go back to Hawaii. I need that as a magnet, as a target. He said, well, we're going to do another angiogram. I said, okay, go ahead. He did it, and he goes, oh, my God. I said, what? He goes, you reversed your own severe coronary artery disease by over 40%. I said, okay, can I have the note? He goes, yep. He gave me the note. I went back. You announced me across the finish line. I did Ironman. And then I went and did World Marathon Challenge a couple of years later because I got fit. I was ready to go. I was hammering. I was training. I was in the best shape in the last 20 years of my life. And I went to, did the 7 marathons in 7 continents in 7 days. And I felt pretty good doing that. No issues. But then I got home and all of a sudden I could feel this breathing problem again, which I hadn't felt in like 3 years. I'm like, what the heck? And then I realized you can't run away from your genetics. And I went back in and had another angiogram, and he said, you got 90% blockage. I said, how'd that happen? He goes, it's just genetics. And I said, well, what are my options? He says, well, you can do nothing and live a sedentary life. I said, cross that off. He said, well, really? We could stent it, but it's really close to your heart, and it could be risky. I said, I'm not taking a risk with my heart. One false move and see ya. He goes, okay. And he says, oh, we can do open heart surgery. I said, nah, I don't like that one either. He goes, well, you run out of options. I said, well, there's this little race in April, 6 months from now, and I've shuffled through it a couple of times. What do you think? And he gave me the best possible answer. He didn't say, no, I don't think you can do it. Or yes, I think you can do it. He said, I'd be extremely disappointed if you couldn't do it. I went, whoa, okay. And it gave me that 4-letter word that I needed at the moment, and that is hope. Okay, all right. So let's go ahead with this surgery, rip me open and do a triple bypass on me. And then I got to figure out a way to delicately balance, because my heart surgeon said I've never operated on someone as fit as you. So I don't know what the recovery is going to look like. And I said, well, I surely don't. I've never been through this one before. So I said, well, let's give it a go. And, so it was one of those things where did the operation, then I was in a walker. Oh, by the way, and I set the record for the 1 mile walk in a walker around the cardiac ward in Mass General Hospital.
Of course you did.
I got that record. So they let me out 4 days later. Of course I did. They let me out 4 days later. And I was in the recliner and the whole bit. Katie's taking care of me and whatever. And then it's like, okay, go walk a half mile and walk a mile and walk 2 miles and walk, jog and jog, walk. And, just that whole very, sort of tedious recovery training concept. And I had 6 months to both recover and to train for a marathon. And I did. And I was able to run my 47th Boston at night after directing the race 6 months after having open heart bypass surgery.
When people hear that story, I know when they hear that story, Dave, they go, well, it's not possible. But when you have a life that is being built from the time you're 14 years old with goals and success, don't you think that has built such a strong foundation for you to be able to continue doing what you're doing?
Yeah, of course. Because, one of the reasons why I continue to do like the birthday run, even though right after my surgery, I changed the rules a little bit and I ran, instead of running 60 whatever miles, 64 miles, I ran a marathon and then biked the rest because I knew, that I didn't want to hurt myself. Yeah. I mean, a lot of people on the outside looking at it might think I'm a fool and I'm pushing the envelope too much, but I'm not. I know my limits, and everyone, and that's the whole idea. You have to understand your thresholds, and again, I think there's two other types of pain. There's wanting pain and challenging pain. And you have to be able to distinguish between the two. And when I was feeling my difficulty breathing and my discomfort in my chest, I knew that was a wanting pain. That wasn't a challenging pain. That was like, oh, see if we can bust through this. I got 7 friends of mine, Mike, who were Olympic trial caliber, 220, 222, right? And they went out for a run one day and never come home because either they were in denial or I don't know. I don't know why they didn't know that they had a problem. But at least I got a second chance. And the reason why I got a second chance is I forced the issue, and that's my whole motto right now. My whole mission, is awareness. In Massachusetts, they have a public safety campaign that says, if you see something, say something, right? Yeah. My campaign is, if you feel something, say something. And you and I both know we can count on 2 hands people like a Greg Welch, and on the list goes without naming names, of folks very close to both of us who we have found out recently have some form of heart illness, so, and, they're monitoring it and they're taking care of it. I mean, these are Ironman winners. These are Boston Marathon winners, New York City Marathon winners, the list goes on and on and on. And it doesn't mean you're immune, right? And so we all got to monitor ourselves. The most important, if you live a life like this, and I don't mean this selfishly, but if you live a life saying the most important person on the planet is you, it has to be. It's almost like if you're on an airplane and, they say when the oxygen mask comes down, who do you put the mask on first? You. You put it on you so you can help the person next to you, because if you're gone, you're not going to be able to help anyone, right? So same with me. I want to take care of myself so I'm in a better position to help out, so I don't have to burden anyone to take care of me. And I'm in a better position to help those who need my help, right? So the awareness and the whole idea is to take care of yourself.
Hold on, everyone. We'll be right back after a message from our sponsors. I just finished up a run, and Activites, the official topical pain relief partner of Ironman, keeps me going. Don't let strain and pain keep you from your training, keep you from finding your finish line. Activites comes in 3 different applications: roll-on, spray, and gel. Check out all the products on Amazon.com, at Walmart, and Ironman.com, and have Activites help you find your finish line. Dave, how have you seen, being the father that you are, how have you seen, I know you're not the type to preach, or you have to do this, or you better do this, or you better take this path. You lead by more of example, but how have you seen that help lead your kids on their direction in life? Yeah,
you're right. I don't force them in any direction. If they feel they want to pursue a path, they pursue the path, and everyone's different. It's funny that, they're your kids, so they sort of grew up under the same roof, but they all have their separate personalities and different, idiosyncrasies and whatnot. They're all very, very, very different from one another. Some are really emotional, some are not as emotional, all of that. But the main thing that I want to, and I think have done a pretty good job with my wife, Katie, and Sue, is instill the concept of goodness. They're just good kids. And that means the world to me. They get all A's in school. Some of them are athletic. Some of them are driven by other things. My son Ryan works for me now at DMSE Sports. My other son Max lives in LA, and he's becoming a film director, producer, and all of that. And my 3 younger kids are here at home, and Luke runs like crazy, and he's a really good runner, and Ellie runs, but she does dance too. And Chloe, everyone's different, and that's what's great about it all. No one's being forced in any direction. They do what's in their heart, what they're passionate about. But as long as they're good kids, and they are. Good kids could be because of good parents. That's
it is amazing how actions speak louder than words. And when I see that at running events and triathlon events where a mom or dad's coming through the finish line and you see the kids there just going crazy for them, the first thing I think about, I go, oh my gosh, what a fantastic positive influence on those children. You can't teach that. You can't preach that. It's something they see and it's something they feel. And I think that's how you've lived your life. Let's talk about this streak thing. Okay.
Yeah.
You streak freak. Last March, 14th, you decided, which blew me away. I just figured, you wanted to go consecutive days across the country and down the coast and, so many Bostons and yada, yada, yada. And you had never done a daily running streak.
No.
I mean, you wanted to see if you could go for like 365 days in this past, March 14th, a few days ago. You accomplished that. Why? Where'd that come from?
Well, there's the U.S. Streak Association or the International Streak Association, whatever. And, I'm on their email list, and I've always been fascinated by how these folks do that. Ron Hill is the king, was the king before he passed, and he was my inspiration to run the Boston Marathon. Like I said, I heard about him winning in the 1970 Boston, so that's what inspired me. And so I always followed Ron from England, and he had the longest streak, 50, 51, 52 years without missing a day. And there was so many other people have 20 years, 30 years, 40 years. So just doing 1 year is a nothing comparatively. But everything is, put it in perspective. I had never done it. So it's just something that I said, it's something within my, bandwidth. Let's see if I can do it without hurting myself. Everything is always prefaced by saying, I don't want to do it at the expense of hurting myself. With all the miles I've run, the triathlons I've done, and all these running across the country things and running 40, 50 miles every single day without a day off for 80 days and all that stuff, you would think that I'd have artificial this, that, and the other thing. I'd be the bionic man type thing. But I'm, knock on wood, and I don't want to jinx myself, but lucky me, I'm good. There's no knee replacements or hip replacements so far. I'm good. So, is that biomechanics? Is that genetics? Is that me just being sensitive to the onset of a issue and backing off? I don't know. But I said, if I'm going to run every single day and try to get a year in, I'm not gonna do it at the expense of I have an injury and I'm going to run right through it. But I didn't have an injury, and I got the 365 days. That was a week ago, but I didn't. I'm still haven't taken a day off. So
of course you didn't.
I'm stuck.
You're stuck. You haven't stopped. It's gonna grab you. You know that. It's just gonna keep you.
Yeah, I know.
It's gonna talk to you every morning when you wake up.
I know. Everyone that heard I did it, that has a streak, saying, you've got to take a day off. You've got to stop now. You have to, because this will go on for the rest of your life. You know that. I know. But I'm not going
Dave,
after
talking
Ron
about
that.
Yeah, really. No. If you do that, then you are a bionic man.
50. Yeah.
Yeah. Hey, by the way, how have the race plans been going, race prep wise, business wise for the marathon this year? Any new developments? What's going on?
No, I mean, so we had the 2019 business as usual, even though it was a nasty day. And then 220, we canceled and did a virtual. And then 221, we came back, did not do a virtual, but did sort of a modified version of the marathon where we downsized it to 20,000 people, did a rolling start and did some mitigation, and sort of a lot of the extraneous activities weren't conducted only because of, the whole social distancing thing. And now we're back pretty much doing almost everything that we normally do, so there's 30,000 people, there's 4 waves. Everything at the start. Generally speaking, there's an athlete's village again. Some minor changes to sort of, again, play it safe. But no, it's almost like take the playbook out of the top drawer from 2019 and kind of follow that again. But what's a little weird is, even though I've been doing this myself for like 30, 35 years, in not doing it for, not doing it for 30, not doing it for 3 years, it's like one of those things that Alexa's speaking. And not doing it for 3 years, it's almost like you get a little rusty, and you go, oh yeah. And then you keep saying, well, the last time we did it, oh yeah, that was 3 years ago. So you have to kind of regroup a little bit and remember how you did it before, so you can, you don't make similar mistakes, or you improve, or you enhance, you make it a better program. So, but also
you and Matt, I can imagine, because others who volunteer and help you out at the start and the finish line, they've kind of got to be retrained a little bit too, probably.
Yeah, all of that, and everyone is. I mean, everyone has. I mean, it was like October almost. I felt like October was like a warm up, for April. Even though it was only 6 months ago, and you're going to put together 2 Boston marathons back to back in 6 months. Yep. But even though like October was interesting, because it almost was like starting over, because you're doing things you never did before, and you don't really know whether they're going to work until it's over. But at the same time, it was a little easier because there was less people. And we had a little bit more time. The cities and towns gave us a little bit more time to start the race and conduct the event. But now we're back to the way it was. So, but it just seems like yesterday when we just did it. So, it feels relatively comfortable right now where we're at. And I think we're ready to put on another good show.
Well, we're talking to Dave McGillivray, famed Boston race director. Dave, tell us about the newly named Dave McGillivray Finish Strong Foundation. What is that all about, and who's it support?
Well, interesting, Mike. You have a lot of professional athletes out there who, once their career ended, they started their own foundation and doing great work. But after their main focus is over, and now they can focus on their foundation. Well, I started the DMSE Foundation like 12 years ago, and mainly because I was raising money for so many different causes my whole life. Through all my events and personal fundraising, you're in the hundreds of millions of dollars going all over the place, which, again, that's what I'd like my legacy to be, not how many miles I've run or races I've directed, but maybe how many lives that we've helped save or chances we've given to people, and just like you all and Babbitt and all those guys with CAF. I mean, that's the world I live in too, and that's where I get my most reward and joy. But with the DMSE Foundation, I started it, but I never really put much energy or time into it because I was so busy with the mothership and putting on events. But now things are, since the pandemic, and we, unfortunately in 2020, every one of our 35 events went over the cliff. And I really thought this could be it. I don't know how we were going to keep a pulse. And then I realized that, our skill set was transferable and we could do other things. So we started doing outdoor, sort of drive-in movies and renting our road race equipment to restaurants for outdoor dining and outdoor graduations and all this stuff. And so meanwhile, when all that was going on, I wasn't as busy. And so I said, I'm going to relaunch my foundation. And I thought, maybe we can rename it and make it a little bit more personal and have a different mission statement and all of that. So over the last 3, 4, 5 months, that's what I've been busy doing, in addition to bringing back all our events. And, we're about to quote unquote launch it. And the whole idea is just to give, motivate kids primarily through education, through literacy, and through doing acts of kindness. And if you read in the back of my Dream Big book, well, all three children's books, you'll see the Dream Big Marathon Challenge. And what that is the concept of the three pillars of life, at least the way I look at it, is education, it's health and fitness, and it's philanthropy. And so that's what I want to drive basically with kids, is the whole idea of the children's books and inspiring them to read and then do something about it. Health and fitness, obviously giving kids a chance to participate in sport. And then the whole concept of giving back, philanthropy, acts of kindness. And so that's what the foundation's mission is. I'm also helping kids with Sarah Reinstein's husband, Brooke, helped start this concept of running as a right, where we're buying blades for kids who have prosthetics. So it's one thing to have a prosthetic. It's another thing to have a blade to put on the prosthetic so you can now run. And so that I love that concept, that now not only did they get a chance to get a new leg with the prosthetic, but now we're giving them another chance to be able to run by giving them the blade. So we're doing. I've already bought a bunch of blades for kids and stuff, and it just makes it's a really good feeling, and it's going back to where this all started for me. It's like I said to my parents, I said, can you give me one thing, and what's that? A chance, because that's all we are. Isn't that all we ever want in life, all of us?
Yeah, no doubt about that. Dave, when it comes to your work, you are, in my mind, one of the best event directors in the world. And, with your accomplishment and success in that arena, what are you most proud of when it comes to you being a manager of events? What are you most proud of in the work world on your side of the business?
Well, when I used to be asked what I did for a living, I used to mumble, I'm a race director. And they're like, what? I'm a race director. And people are like, wait a minute, your brother works for the Carroll Center for the Blind, helping the blind. Your other brother's a CPA, and your sister's a social worker. Your other sister's a nurse, and you're a race director? Like, what the heck is that? Chalk mark in the road, yell go, kind of a thing. And, I said, well, yeah, I guess that's what I do. But the reality is, when I started my business, DMSE Sports, back in the 80s, people say, you really think you can earn a living putting on road races? I said, I'm not just putting on road races. What are you doing? I said, I'm helping to raise the level of self-confidence and self-esteem of tens of thousands of people in this country. They go, what? I said, no, that's what this does. And when people say to me, what's the toughest part about running in a marathon? Well, the toughest part is signing the application, having the guts to make that commitment. Then, like my grandfather said, you got to earn the right to do it. You got to do the work. Then you toe the line, you answer the gun, you run the course, you cross the finish line, you get a medal, and then magic happens. You go home feeling good about yourself. And there's nothing more powerful in this planet than to feel good about yourself, because that's the very foundation by which we accomplish everything in our lives. So in my business, I feel like I'm giving tens of thousands of people that opportunity to feel good about themselves, because everything takes off from there. I'm not teaching them how to play the piano or teaching them how to cook or teaching them how to be a good parent. But once they cross that finish line and get that medal and drive home feeling good, the rest of the day is going to be a good day, right? And they're going to do good things because they feel good about themselves. That's what I do.
You're right. And those good days, they morph into good weeks and good months and good years. So that's, Dave, I've got to bring up a memory. Salem, Massachusetts, the Saucony sales meeting was there. The day before the sales meeting started, I think we started on Sunday, it was a Saturday, you had the Salem 10K. And I went out for a run from the hotel, and I look up the street. I don't know if you remember this. And there you are with white lime, what was that, gypsum lime? And you're lining the course for this 10K, and it was about 95 degrees, and I'm looking, and I run up, I go, Dave, how you doing? Hey, Mike. And you're just out there with lime all over the place, and I'm thinking, who would want to do this? I'd rather run the race than be a race director. But you're right. That's what you did.
Yeah. Well, I have a button in my office that says "My job secure. No one else wants it." Right. And back in those days, there weren't many. There weren't event management companies. Wasn't a big bucket of resources. You were a jack of all trades. You had to do it all. Even in the early years with Boston in the 80s, I mean, I was literally out stenciling the mile markers on the course the day before the race. I put the stencil in the back of my car, get a whole bunch of aerosol white paint, and I drive down the course, and I know where the miles are, and I'm spray painting and put the back and keep going. That's what we did back then. Now it's a little different for sure, but whatever it took, you did. And I've always felt that I'm not above doing whatever it takes to get the job done. If it's hauling barricades or moving road cones or painting mile markers or picking up trash, it's got to get done, and you do it. And, I've always felt that as an event director and the person ultimately responsible, you should always be the first one to show up and the last one to leave, and just make sure that everything is done the way it should be done.
Dave, what can the sport of running be better at, do better at right now? What do you see in the future of the sport?
That's a really good question. There's so much going on, obviously. One thing I've always felt, and it's no one to blame, it's just the way it is I have felt that, at least way back when, it was very fragmented. Not that we didn't support one another, but we did our own thing, right? And that's still somewhat the case. Everyone's sort of a little bit, in a sort of on an island of their own, and like in a silo, they do their own thing. Some accept hand cycles in their race, others don't. Some do wheelchairs, others don't. Some offer prize money, others don't. Some have large events, others are smaller. Everything's so different depending on, the goals, the objectives, the municipality within which you conduct the events, the course, the distance, all of that, right? And so it's hard to be aligned with everything. And sometimes I think we give mixed messages to our customers, because you go to one race and this is this set of rules, or you go to another race and it's a different set of rules. It's like, which is it, guys? So one thing for me, as far as what we can do better, is maybe collaborate a little bit more. I'm not saying I have the answer to how that's done, but I think organizations like Running USA and Road Runners Club of America, and even USA TNF, attempt to do that. And I think the more we do of that, not that everything has to be exactly the same, but it just we can learn more from each other. Certainly, that's one thing that I think, at least from an operational perspective. There's so many other pieces, whether it's doping control, whether it's the footwear these days, whether it's insurance. There's so many different layers here that, and again, road races are big, a lot of them are big business now, dealing with millions of dollars in sponsorship, corporate America, to media from all over the world, to, the whole aspect of health and fitness and medical, and then technology is off the charts. I mean, the three things that have changed the most in this industry since I started is technology, security, and medical. And those are three areas I have virtually nothing to do with. I'm still like water stations, make sure they go in the right direction, don't go off the course, don't run out of water, time and score the thing, give them their banana and send them on their way. I mean, that's sort of that's those are the main ingredients that at the end of the day we don't want to lose sight of.
Right. Dave, what advice would you give to the runners out there, and even all the age group triathletes? We've been going through obviously a tough 2.5 years, and hopefully we're coming out of it and we'll be able to go to events. But what advice would you give to them so they keep a positive attitude and keep moving forward?
Yeah, well, again, I think it's perspective in terms of why you're doing this to begin with, right? I mean, during the entire pandemic, you could still go out and ride your bike and run. I mean, that didn't stop. If you were a basketball player or a football player or, whatever, then, if you worked out in a health club, those all got shut down. But for us, we were very fortunate that our sport, our passion was not stripped from us. Yeah, the competitive side of it, participating in a in-person competitive event, took a backseat. I never said that we lost business. We just lost permission to conduct it for a short period of time, and now it's back, right? And and again, everything is perspective. And I don't think any of us in the running industry or triathlon industry should have felt, like we're getting truly dinged. We're the lucky ones that could carry on if we're truly passionate about what we're doing, while others were struggling. But what's great now, and we hate the word, but we pivoted, right? And so a lot of races did come back in late 2020, early 2021, and then in full scale in late 21, where we were doing all this different types of spreading things out, and we learned a lot from that too. We in a lot of those races, there were no goodie bags, there were no award ceremonies, there were no post race parties. In some cases, there were no medals or T-shirts. It's just come run and grab your bottle of water, put your mask back on, and go home. That was okay. That was okay for that time. Now, coming full bore back, is that still okay? I doubt it. People want all the accoutrements and all that other stuff, but it just there was something, I don't know, there was something kind of refreshing about during the pandemic, running in that way and shaving away all the ancillary stuff. And it all came down just to the fact that people just wanted to get out there and run and race. And I like that. I really like running in those races in the late 220s and stuff. And anyways, yeah, so there was a learning curve for all of us.
For all of us. So, Dave, the last question on Find Your Finish Line, I call it tri-table racing. It comes out of the Baja 1000 desert racing with trophy trucks and cars down there. I've got friends that race that all the time, and it's an amazing event. Well, after the event, the drivers and they get together and they sit around the table and they reminisce about the event. And we've done that so many times. So I call it tri-table racing. Reminisce with us. Pick any event you've ever done, whatever it is, a moment in the event, just whatever comes to your mind, reminisce with us and do a little tri-table racing with us.
Well, there are high points and low points, and sometimes the most memorable are the low points. But one point, finding your finish line, an interesting one. When I was doing the World Marathon Challenge, we were in Cartagena in Colombia in South America, and we were running in the old city, and then we had to go out into the newer part of the city and then come back. Well, like 90% of us got lost. And, I didn't have a watch on at the time because I wasn't wearing a GPS watch. So I had no idea how far I had run. And I was like yelling at people saying, how far am I? Where am I? Where? And then I couldn't find the finish line. So every time you say find your finish line, I think of that event saying I never found it. Like, I think I found it, but I wasn't sure. Anyways, but I have so many stories in the running industry, as you can imagine, from things that happen in Boston to things that happen in some of my triathlons to things that there's just so many. But one that sort of jumps out is I was doing the Goodwill Games triathlon in Manhattan. And
what year was that?
So
that was
1990, I think it was.
Okay.
And Greg Welch was in the race, and Mecca, and just the best athletes in the world were there on live television, Turner Sports. And so the swim was in the Hudson River by the World Trade Center. And so it was funny because we walk up to the water and I'm looking in the water. It looked nasty. And I say to Welchie, he goes, what? He goes, I said, what do you think? He goes, where are I? Just get rid of that stuff over there. I said, all right, well, sweep that out of the way so no one sees it. He said, we'll be fine. He said, I've swum in worse. I said, all right. We dumped everyone in the Hudson River. And I'm like, oh my God, is this really going to work? And then they come out of the water and they jump on their bikes and they're biking up FDR Drive towards Central Park, going through Times Square, the whole bit. And then, so I get in the car and we're driving up to go to Central Park to see the run and the finish. And I got in a car accident. So I'm like, okay, I'm not going to make it there in time. But we finally got there. And as I got there, so the day before we had a technical meeting, and I said to all the athletes, the 10K is 3 laps around the lower part of Central Park, but that's not a 10K. So I had to add a splinter loop and out and back. Okay. So I said, when you get off your bike, you're going to go out a little bit and back and then do the 3 loops. Okay. Well, I get to Central Park and they miss the out and back and they're going in the wrong direction. And I'm like, oh my God, I can't believe this 2 years of planning. And these guys didn't do the splinter loop, and they're going counterclockwise. They're supposed to be going clockwise. This thing is a bloody mess. And I'm like, I don't know what to do. And I said, well, so I commandeered a motorcycle, and I went around and I told every single athlete in the race, I said, when you get back to the finish line, you got to keep going and add that splinter loop at the end instead of doing it at the beginning. And they all did it except 3 athletes, and the 3 athletes were at the time in 4th, 5th, and 6th. I was like, oh my God, I'm going to be toast. And what happened is that a park ranger thought these road cones, that was the turnaround, were in the wrong place, and she moved them all. And that's why they never saw the turnaround. And shame on me for making the mistake of not putting a real bona fide, key person at that turn. It was just this person who really didn't know the course. And the whole thing was basically a disaster. So what was the first thing I did? The first thing I did was I hid behind a tree. and my wife at the time caught me. She tapped me on the shoulder. She says, what are you doing? I said, what's it look like I'm doing? I'm hiding behind this tree. She said, why? I said, I'm trying to gain my composure. I said, I have to face the international media in the next 20 minutes and explain what happened here. And I said, I got to figure out what to say. And so, I did, and I took the hit, and I said, guilty as charged, my fault, the whole bit. But, and then Turner ended up dumping in more money, like another $100,000 to pay off the 4th, 5th, and 6th guy who dropped out because they missed the out and back on the back end. So everything was even. But the point being in all this, 2 years of planning, live television, thinking I got this thing nailed. I got him in the water. I got him on the bike. And I said, the easiest thing is to run 3 loops around Central Park. We got this. And it was just a disaster, right?
Well,
and so even the most experienced event director in the world, they make bumper stickers, stuff happens. And I'll never forget that moment, but I hid behind a tree.
Well, you're a stronger soul than most, because I don't know how many event directors out there today would keep doing what they're doing, Dave, after that happened to them. So thank goodness your resolve is there. Yeah.
Well, it just shows you how vulnerable we are, Mike. This isn't a beach volleyball tournament, where it's all right there where you can see it. Triathlons. I mean, I did the Cape Cod Endurance and Ironman distance one. That was the first Ironman distance triathlon in the world after at the time, after Oahu, and I did it in 1981, and stuff like that. And I say to myself, my God, you know how many things can go wrong here? Like, you got people spread out over 100 miles. This is nuts, but that's what we do. I wouldn't change a thing.
You kept wanting to do it, which was fortunate for us. Dave McGillivray, our sport is very fortunate to have you in it, and to have your kindness and your always outlook on life and the hope that you give other people to be able to keep moving forward. So thank you very much for that. I know you're a busy guy. Good luck running your 50th. Good luck putting on the race, and good luck running your 50th in April at the Boston Marathon, Dave. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mike. I appreciate it. And someday I want you to call my name one more time.
Okay. Let's make a promise to each other. We'll do that.
Okay. We'll do that.
Thank you again, Dave McGillivray, and thank you again to Active Ice, the official topical pain relief partner of Ironman. Make sure you get it on Amazon, at Walmart, at Ironman.com. If you enjoyed the show, subscribe to it if you would. You can do that on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Overcast, or go to my website, MikeRiley.net. Thank you again, everybody, for listening. Remember, you're the cause of your own experiences. If you keep those positive, they will get you to your next finish line. Take care, everyone. Aloha.